Hello BookTube, it's Louise from the Big Head Bookworm. Lovely to see you again. I've just closed the curtain, so I hope it looks all right. But I was really glary. I've just filmed another video and I was a bit glary, so I've kind of closed the curtains and I'm hoping it looks a bit more filtered. Perhaps, maybe. Anyway, I'm here today to do a video with some recommends actually. A book I read, book I bought, book I read, and it made me think about all the other books that are similar to it that you might well enjoy. So the book I bought and read was Outrage by Vincent Bugliosi. I'm just going to call him Vincent. Let's just call the man Vincent. And it is about the five reasons why O.J. Simpson got away with murder. Now, this was written shortly after the not guilty verdict came down, and he is a LA County prosecutor. He was not involved in the case. That was Marsha Clark who did the case, and he is outraged. He is outraged at the not guilty verdict. He finds that the prosecutors were willfully incompetent and has such a problem with how lenient Judge Ito was with the dream team of OJ and the whole direction of the case, and it is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. It's not a book that you're immediately going to start with because it's not a what happened kind of novel, kind of book. It presumes that you know an awful lot about it because it was written shortly after. And if you remember, the O.J. Simpson case gripped America, and it absolutely divided America. So it is fascinating to read. But what's so amazing about this book is how angry he is. And there's this lovely quote here. He said, for several weeks after the verdict, I was so angry I could have eaten nails. And I'm still angry. The reader should be prepared for an almost unremitting, scathing indictment of what took place in this case. And it is literally, how many pages? About 500 pages of him. So it's not one that you can read in one sitting, but it is really enjoyable. It made me realise how much I do enjoy real crime books and how many I've actually read over the years. So I thought I'd come along with some recommendations that you might like. So again, I shall hold this book up, but I actually have read Helter Skelter, which was his first book, which he wrote in the 70s because Vincent was the prosecutor who prosecuted Charles Manson and the Manson family and got the guilty verdict. And this is what happened. So starting from Charles Manson, why did he become who he became, all the way through the court case and looking at the family. And I read an updated version that was talking about what had happened in the subsequent years. The actual Manson murders happened in 1969 and Manson wasn't actually convicted for actually doing the murder, but for masterminding it all, cold-bloodedly masterminding it all. Was it the Tate and LaBianca murders, they were called? And it shocked Hollywood and it shocked the nation, shocked America. It's an incredibly well-known case, and the book is brilliant. The book is called Helter Skelter, and I completely recommend it. If you can get hold of a copy, it's really worth it for a real crime. Another one that's about a serial killer, which starts from when he's younger all the way through and actually up to his death, is The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. This is an old copy. I bet there is a more glamorous cover available now, but this is my very, very well read old copy. Now, Anne Rule was one of the first people that actually became well known herself for her real crime, her true crime writing, and actually helped for the genre to actually be developed as a mainstream genre that people could look up. And the reason is, this is about Ted Bundy. She knew him. She knew him before he was Ted Bundy. What was he called? It was just Ted Bundy. I mean, he was just a serial killer. And it is stunning. It is a stunning book because she actually knows him. And so she talks about how she knew him beforehand and how she knew his girlfriends. And she, after he'd been found, he'd been arrested and then released, she went and had lunch with him, and it's stunning. It's a stunning book. It's quite chunky, but it's such a good book. I completely recommend it. It reads like a novel. I mean, and yet it is all true. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, and it is heartbreaking with the stories of the women that he actually killed, and it was the long dark hair parted in the centre. He had an absolute type that he went for. But that's really good. It's called The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. That was one of her first big books that she wrote about it. She used to do a lot of case files in a lot of magazines. She then subsequently went on and wrote Small Sacrifices, which is by Diane Downs, who actually, unfortunately it does feature children, because she actually shot 2 of her children. It is unbelievably shocking. And again, Anne Rule did meet Diane Downs. So that is phenomenal. That is a phenomenal book. It's called Small Sacrifices. Again, that's an old edition. And then I think the best Anne Rule is And Never Let Her Go, which is about Thomas Campano. And it is a really, really, really good book if you like true crime. So those are the 3 that I would recommend by Anne Rule. Okay, so that's there. If you want more literary true crime, there are literary true crime books out there. Try and say that fast. The first one I would recommend is The Monster of Florence by, Douglas Preston and with Mario Spezzi. Can you see that? Let me hold that better. Is that right? There we go. Now I'll read the back of this because they praise it much better than I do. The Monster of Florence is Italy's answer to Jack the Ripper. He murdered 7 couples in secluded areas outside of Florence over a period of 10 years, from 1974 to 1985. He left behind mutilated corpses and a media frenzy. Best-selling thriller writer Douglas Preston and Italian crime reporter Mario Spezzi decided to investigate these chilling unsolved murders. In their quest to identify the killer, they uncovered a murky world of accusations, a corrupt police force, and a killer always one step ahead. It is really, really good. Again, it does read like a novel. You can't believe actually this did happen, and I thought this was absolutely grilling. So it's called The Monster of Florence. So really recommend that. More literary. It feels much more literary. The other one that I consider more literary is The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher, or The Murder at Road Hill House. Now, this is actually a true crime story that has all the high hallmarks of a classic gripping murder mystery. A body, a detective, a country house steeped in secrets, and a whole family of suspects. Now, this actually happened on the 30th of June in 1860s. As I can say, it's true crime, and unfortunately, the youngest son was found dead in an outside toilet. And the suspicion fell on a maid, I think, or possibly the father. And it is stunning. It's such a good book. Now, I read it when it came out, and I just recently picked up this copy because I saw it again. I was like, oh, I'm talking about real crime, and this is one of those real crime books. And it is really good. It is really fascinating. There was a TV programme, I think, about it, which you may have seen. But I completely recommend this. So that's The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher by Kate Summerscale. The other one there are 2 others that I would recommend, which I don't actually have copies, although I have read them both. The first one is, I'm going to look up my book, and it's In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. One of the classics. I mean, it's just a classic full stop, isn't it? It's his only full-length book, isn't it? He was much more of a journalist, and they do say that this is the one that actually stopped Truman Capote actually being able to carry on writing, actually, and this was published in the 1960s, but is still phenomenally, it was called a non-fiction novel at the time because people couldn't actually believe that it wasn't fiction, and there is questions as to how much was actually true in his interviewing of the murderers. And it's in 1959, a small Kansas town. 4 members of the Clutter family were savagely murdered by a shotgun held inches from their face. Truman Capote reconstructs the murder and the investigation which led to the eventual execution of the killers, and it is well worth reading, so I totally recommend that. And the other one is In the Garden of Good and Evil by John Brent, which is Bendt, John Brent, and this is set in Savannah, in the deep south, which is an appalling accent, and I apologise immediately for doing that. And it's shots rang out in Savannah's grandest mansion in the misty early morning hours of May the 2nd, 1981. Was it murder or self-defense. Now, I remember reading this when the book came out, which is again mid-90s. Oh, so atmospheric. It made me want to go to Savannah. It had that kind of misty, languid, atmospheric, decadent, faded glamour. Just brilliant. A really, really good book. So I totally recommend that. So those are my true crime reads, and I completely recommend them all. Maybe have a go if you've not read this genre before, because it is really good, especially if you like crime, you like mysteries, you like thrillers, you like a good read. That's what I would say. I would say these are good for reading. Okay, I hope that helps. I hope there's a book there that might tickle your fancy, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Bye-bye, Richard.